When Elena Castellano found herself 6 months pregnant, bruised, and digging through garbage after being brutally kicked out by her in-laws, she had no idea she was actually a billionaire CEO who had supposedly died 2 years ago, or that the loving family who rescued her from amnesia had orchestrated her attempted murder to steal her empire, trapped her in an abusive marriage with a fake identity, and were now planning to kill her the moment her baby was born. But some women are too dangerous to stay buried, and when Elena's memories came flooding back, she didn't just want her life back. She wanted revenge against the criminal family that had stolen 2 years of her existence, destroyed 17 other innocent people, and threatened the one thing that mattered most, her unborn child. Armed with nothing but her brilliant mind, her father's detective skills, and the fierce protective instincts of a mother-to-be, Elena launched a war against an empire of corruption that reached into the highest levels of power, only to discover in her moment of ultimate triumph that her greatest enemy was. My beautiful family and friends, welcome back. If you're ready for another unforgettable story, do me a quick favor, hit that like button. Why? Because every like tells YouTube this story is worth sharing with more people who might really need it today. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. I read every single one, and it makes me feel like we're sitting together in the same room, sharing these moments heart to heart. And don't forget to share this video with someone you love. You never know, the story you share might be the encouragement they've been praying for. This isn't just a channel, it's a family. And when you engage, you're helping us build a safe space where real stories bring real hope. Now, take a deep breath. Get comfortable, and let's dive into today's story. The November rain fell like icy needles against Elena's swollen face, each drop a cruel reminder of how far she had fallen. 6 months pregnant and 3 days homeless, she crouched behind the dumpster of Milano's finest restaurant, her designer wedding dress, now stained and torn, clinging to her trembling frame like a ghost of better times. Her manicured fingers, once accustomed to signing contracts worth millions, now desperately searched through discarded food containers. The irony wasn't lost on her. 6 months ago, she could have bought this entire restaurant chain with a single phone call. Now, she was grateful for their leftover breadcrumbs. The baby kicked inside her belly, as if sensing her desperation. Elena placed a protective hand over her bump, whispering through chattering teeth, "I'm sorry, little one. Mama's going to figure this out." The metallic taste of blood lingered in her mouth from where her mother-in-law's ring had connected with her cheek during their final confrontation. "You gold-digging whore," Victoria Rossetti had snarled, her perfectly Botoxed face twisted with disgust. "Did you really think we wouldn't find out about your lies?" But they hadn't found out about her lies. They had created their own version of the truth. Elena's real identity remained buried somewhere in the fog of her accident-induced amnesia, a mystery that had haunted her for 2 years. All she remembered was waking up in a charity hospital with nothing but a fake ID and a fractured memory. A car door slammed nearby, jolting Elena from her thoughts. Heavy footsteps approached, and she pressed herself deeper into the shadows, heart hammering against her ribs. Through the rain, she could make out an expensive suit and polished shoes, the kind of wealth she had once known intimately, though she couldn't remember why. "Ma'am." The voice was gentle, concerned. "Are you all right?" Elena looked up to see a distinguished man in his 50s, holding an umbrella. His eyes widened as he took in her condition, the torn wedding dress, the bruises, the obvious pregnancy. "I'm fine," she lied, struggling to stand with whatever dignity she had left. The man studied her face intently, and something flickered in his expression. Recognition? Confusion? "Forgive me, but have we met before? You look remarkably like someone I used to know." Elena's pulse quickened. For 2 years, she had searched for anyone who might recognize her, might hold the key to her forgotten past. "I don't think so," she whispered, though her heart screamed otherwise. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through what appeared to be old photos. The screen's glow illuminated his face as his eyes darted between Elena and whatever image he was studying. His hands began to tremble. "My God," he breathed, his voice barely audible over the rain. "It can't be. You died 2 years ago. I was at your funeral." What do you think happened to Elena 2 years ago that made everyone believe she was dead? Drop your theories in the comments below. The stranger's words hit Elena like a physical blow. Died? Funeral? The fragments of memory that had been locked away began rattling in their cage, desperate to break free. But before she could respond, headlights swept across the alley, and she heard the one voice that made her blood run cold. "There she is." Marcus Rossetti's voice boomed through the night. "I told you she'd come crawling back." Elena's husband emerged from a black sedan with 2 of his brothers, their faces masks of cold fury. The kind stranger stepped protectively in front of her, but Elena knew it was useless. The Rossetti family owned half this city. No one crossed them and lived to tell about it. "Step away from my wife," Marcus commanded, his hand moving ominously toward his jacket. "This doesn't concern you, old man." But as the stranger turned to face Marcus fully, Elena saw something that made her gasp. Even in her fractured state of memory, she recognized authority when she saw it. This wasn't just any concerned citizen. This was someone with real power. The question was, would it be enough to save her and her unborn child from the nightmare her life had become? The stranger straightened to his full height, and Elena watched in amazement as Marcus, who had never backed down from anyone, actually took a step backward. "Detective Romano," Marcus said, his voice losing its earlier confidence. "I didn't realize you were involved in this situation." Detective Romano. The name sparked something deep in Elena's fractured memory, like a match struck in a dark room. She pressed her hand to her temple, fighting against the fog that had shrouded her past for 2 years. "Mrs. Rossetti is under my protection now," Romano said firmly, extending his umbrella to shield Elena from the rain. "I suggest you and your brothers return to your vehicle." Marcus's jaw clenched. "She's my wife. She's carrying my child. You have no legal right." "I have every right to protect a pregnant woman from domestic violence," Romano interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of decades in law enforcement. "The bruises on her face tell quite a story, don't they?" Elena touched her swollen cheek unconsciously. In the 6 months since her wedding, the violence had escalated gradually. First, it was just Marcus's explosive temper when business deals went wrong. Then his mother Victoria's psychological warfare, constantly reminding Elena that she was nothing, a charity case they had graciously rescued from the streets. But tonight had been different. Tonight, Victoria had discovered Elena's pregnancy and had flown into a rage that bordered on psychotic. "You think trapping my son with a bastard child will secure your place in this family?" Victoria had screamed, her perfectly manicured nails leaving scratches on Elena's arms. "You're nothing but a lying whore who crawled out of the gutter." The memory made Elena's stomach churn. She had tried to explain that she loved Marcus, that the baby was conceived in love, but Victoria's hatred ran deeper than reason. "Elena," Marcus said now, his voice softening in that manipulative way she had learned to fear. "Come home. We can work this out. Think about our baby." For a moment, Elena wavered. Despite everything, part of her still remembered the man who had found her broken and lost 2 years ago, who had offered her shelter and eventually his name. Marcus hadn't always been cruel. In the beginning, he had been her savior. But Romano stepped closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "Elena Castellano," he whispered, and the name hit her like lightning. "That's your real name, isn't it? You're not Elena Rossetti. You never were." The world tilted on its axis. Castellano. The name resonated through her bones, awakening something that had been sleeping for 2 years. Images flashed through her mind: boardrooms, contracts, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "I don't understand," she whispered, but even as she spoke, fragments were clicking into place like pieces of a shattered mirror. Romano's eyes filled with tears. "You're my daughter, Elena. My daughter who I buried 2 years ago after the car accident. My daughter who built Castellano Industries from nothing into a billion-dollar empire before she was 30. The revelation hit Marcus like a physical blow. His face went white, then red with rage. "That's impossible. Elena is nobody. She was found with nothing, no ID, no memory, no family." "Because someone wanted it that way," Romano said grimly. "Someone who needed Elena Castellano to disappear permanently." Elena's legs gave out, and she sank onto a nearby crate, her mind reeling. CEO. Billion-dollar empire. Daughter of a detective. The pieces were there, but they felt like someone else's life. "The accident," she whispered. "I remember. I remember driving. It was raining, like tonight. Someone was following me. I was scared." Romano knelt beside her, his weathered face etched with 2 years of grief and sudden impossible hope. "You called me that night. You said someone was trying to kill you, that you had discovered something about the Rossetti family's business dealings. The next thing I knew, your car was found at the bottom of Miller's Ravine." Marcus laughed, but it was a hollow, desperate sound. "This is insane. Elena, don't listen to this old man. He's clearly delusional with grief." "Shut up," Elena said quietly, but with such authority that everyone fell silent. For the first time in 2 years, she felt something stirring inside her that had nothing to do with fear or confusion. It felt like power. She looked up at Romano, her father, and saw her own eyes staring back at her. The same steel gray, the same determined set to the jaw. "Tell me about Castellano Industries." "You built it from the ground up," Romano said, his voice thick with pride and pain. "Started with a small tech company when you were 22. By 28, you were the youngest female CEO to make the Fortune 500 list. You were brilliant, ruthless when you needed to be, but fair. Everyone respected you." "And the Rossettis?" Romano's expression darkened. "Your company was investigating their money laundering operations. You had evidence that could have put the entire family away for life." Elena felt the baby kick again, and this time it felt different, not desperate, but strong. Like the child of a woman who had once commanded boardrooms and built empires. Marcus was backing toward his car now, his brothers flanking him nervously. "Elena, whatever he's telling you, it's lies. You're my wife. You belong with me." But Elena was remembering more now. Not everything, but enough. She remembered the feeling of closing a major deal, the satisfaction of outmaneuvering competitors, the weight of responsibility that came with employing thousands of people. And she remembered something else, a safe deposit box, hidden accounts, evidence that could destroy the Rossetti empire. "I need to see my company," she said, standing with newfound strength. "I need to see what's left of my life." Romano smiled through his tears. Castellano Industries is still there, Elena. I've been running it as a trust, waiting for, well, for a miracle, I suppose. As they walked toward Romano's car, Elena felt Marcus grab her arm. His grip was tight, possessive, and for a moment she saw the real man beneath the charm, the man who had kept her weak and dependent, who had benefited from her amnesia. "You can't just leave," he hissed. "You're carrying my child. I have rights." Elena looked down at his hand on her arm, then back up at his face. When she spoke, her voice carried an authority she hadn't felt in 2 years. "Take your hand off me. Now." Something in her tone made him release her immediately. For just a moment, she saw fear flicker in his eyes, the same fear she had seen in countless business rivals when they realized they were outmatched. What do you think Elena will discover when she returns to her company? And how do you think the Rossettis will react when they realize their victim is actually one of the most powerful women in the city? Share your predictions below. As Romano helped her into his car, Elena caught sight of herself in the side mirror. Despite the bruises and torn dress, despite 6 months of abuse and manipulation, something had awakened in her eyes. Something that looked very much like the woman who had once been feared and respected in boardrooms across the country. The woman who was about to reclaim everything that had been stolen from her. But first, she needed to understand exactly what she was walking back into, and why someone had wanted Elena Castellano dead badly enough to steal 2 years of her life. The Castellano Industries building pierced the dawn sky like a steel and glass monument to ambition. As Romano's car pulled up to the executive entrance, Elena felt her breath catch in her throat. Somewhere in the depths of her fractured memory, she could almost hear the echo of her heels clicking across the marble lobby, the whispered conversations that would stop when she passed. 57 floors, Romano said softly, watching her face. Your office was on the top floor. Corner suite with a view of the entire city. Elena pressed her hand against the car window, and for a moment she could almost see herself, confident, powerful, untouchable. The woman she had been before the accident stole everything away. "Sir." A security guard approached the car, his face lighting up with recognition when he saw Romano. "Detective Romano." "It's been months since," his words died as his gaze shifted to Elena. The guard's face went white. His hand trembled as he reached for his radio, then stopped, staring at Elena as if he'd seen a ghost. "Hello, Marcus," Elena said, the name coming to her lips without conscious thought. Not her husband Marcus. This was Marcus Chin, her former head of security. The memories were trickling back like water through a cracked dam. "Ms. Castellano?" Marcus Chen's voice was barely a whisper. But we had a memorial service. There's a plaque in the lobby with your name on it." "I'm very much alive," Elena said, stepping out of the car with Romano's help, though someone clearly wanted the world to believe otherwise. As they entered the building, Elena felt the familiar weight of authority settling on her shoulders like a well-tailored coat. Employees stopped mid-conversation, their faces cycling through shock, disbelief, and something that looked like hope. The elevator ride to the 57th floor felt like ascending through layers of her own buried life. With each floor, more memories surfaced. The acquisition of Morrison Tech on the 32nd floor. The charity gala planning meetings on the 45th. The late nights spent in her office, building something that would outlast her. When the elevator doors opened to reveal the executive floor, Elena's knees nearly buckled. The familiar scent of leather and coffee, the soft hum of productivity, the floor-to-ceiling windows that had once made her feel like she could conquer the world. "Elena." She turned to see a woman in her 40s rushing toward them, tears streaming down her face. Sarah Martinez, her executive assistant and closest friend. The recognition hit Elena like a physical blow, not just the face, but the relationship, the trust, the countless hours they had worked together. Sarah, Elena breathed, and suddenly she was being enveloped in a fierce hug that smelled of familiar perfume and felt like coming home. I knew it, Sarah sobbed against her shoulder. I knew you weren't dead. I felt it in my bones, but everyone said I was in denial, that I needed to accept. What happened to the company? Elena asked, pulling back to study Sarah's face. Who's been running things? Sarah's expression darkened. That's complicated. Come on, let me show you. They walked down the familiar hallway, past offices that Elena remembered but couldn't quite place. Sarah stopped in front of a door that should have been Elena's office, but the nameplate read something else entirely. Victoria Rossetti, acting CEO, Elena read aloud, her blood turning to ice. She claimed you had signed over power of attorney to her son Marcus before your death, Sarah explained, her voice tight with anger. Said it was part of your marriage agreement. She's been systematically dismantling everything you built. Elena felt the baby kick violently, as if responding to her surge of rage. Victoria, her monster of a mother-in-law, had not only stolen Elena's identity and trapped her in an abusive marriage, but had also stolen her life's work. The employees? Elena asked. 60% layoffs in the first year, Sarah said grimly. She's been selling off divisions, liquidating assets. The company you built to employ thousands and change the world? She's turning it into a shell corporation for money laundering. Romano placed a protective hand on Elena's shoulder. This is why they needed you gone. Not just dead, completely erased. If you had simply died, there would have been investigations, lawyers, complications. But if you disappeared with amnesia, became someone else entirely. They could control the narrative, Elena finished, the full scope of the conspiracy becoming clear. Marcus rescues a mysterious woman with no memory. They create a new identity for me, marry me to legitimize their claim to my company, and then they plan to kill you once the baby was born, Romano said quietly. Make it look like an accident or suicide. Victoria would have full control of Castellano Industries, and Marcus would inherit everything as your widower. Elena's hand moved protectively to her belly. They hadn't just stolen her past. They had planned to steal her future and her child's future as well. There's more, Sarah said, leading them into what had once been Elena's office. The space had been completely transformed. Elena's awards and photos replaced with gaudy decorations, her sleek modern furniture swapped for ornate pieces that screamed new money. Sarah moved to a painting on the wall and swung it aside, revealing a hidden safe. You installed this before the accident. You said if anything ever happened to you, I should show this to your father. Elena watched as Sarah input a code, her birthday, she realized with a start, and the safe clicked open. Inside were documents, flash drives, and a letter with Elena's handwriting. You were building a case against the Rossetti family, Sarah explained, handing Elena the letter. Money laundering, human trafficking, murder. You had enough evidence to destroy them completely. Elena opened the letter with trembling hands. Her own handwriting stared back at her, but the words felt like they belonged to a stranger. If you're reading this, then they succeeded in silencing me. But I've made sure the truth will survive, even if I don't. The evidence is all here, bank records, recorded conversations, witness testimonies. The Rossetti family has been using legitimate businesses as fronts for their criminal empire for decades. They killed my predecessor at Morrison Tech when he got too close to the truth. They'll kill me too, if they get the chance. But I won't let them win. I won't let them destroy the lives of innocent people. If something happens to me, make sure this evidence reaches the FBI. Make sure justice is served. And if by some miracle I survive but lose my memory, know that I am Elena Castellano. I am not a victim. I am not weak. I built an empire with my own hands, and I will not let anyone take that away from me. Elena looked up from the letter to find Romano and Sarah watching her intently. The baby kicked again, and this time it felt like a battle cry. "How long do we have?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Victoria called an emergency board meeting for this afternoon," Sarah said. "She's planning to announce the final liquidation of the company. Once that happens, there won't be anything left to save." Elena walked to the window that had once been hers, looking out over the city she had once helped shape. Somewhere down there, Marcus was probably reporting back to his mother, telling her about the encounter with Romano. They would be planning their next move, trying to figure out how to contain this new threat. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated Elena Castellano. What do you think Elena's first move should be to reclaim her company and expose the Rossetti family? Should she go public immediately or work behind the scenes? Drop your strategy in the comments. She turned back to Romano and Sarah, and they both took an involuntary step backward. The broken, frightened woman from the alley was gone. In her place stood someone who looked very much like the CEO who had once commanded this empire. "Cancel the board meeting," Elena said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Tell them the real Elena Castellano has returned from the dead, and she's calling an emergency shareholders meeting instead." "Elena," Romano said carefully, "they'll try to kill you the moment they realize you remember everything." Elena smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Let them try. But this time, I'll be ready for them." She placed her hand on her belly, feeling her child's strong kicks. "And this time, I'm not just fighting for myself. I'm fighting for the future they tried to steal from both of us." The war for Elena's life, her company, and her child's future was about to begin. And Elena Castellano had never lost a war she was determined to win. Within 2 hours, the executive floor of Castellano Industries buzzed with an energy it hadn't felt in 2 years. Word of Elena's return spread through the building like wildfire, and employees who had been laid off began showing up, drawn by rumors and hope. Elena stood in the conference room, studying the faces of the board members who had filed in with expressions ranging from shock to terror. These were people who had known her, worked with her, and then betrayed her memory by allowing Victoria Rossetti to destroy everything she had built. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena began, her voice carrying across the room with the same commanding presence that had once made her the youngest CEO in the Fortune 500. "I'm sure you're all wondering how someone rises from the dead." Board member James Morrison, no relation to the tech company, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Elena, we were told you died in that car accident. We saw the death certificate, attended the memorial service." "You saw what the Rossetti family wanted you to see," Elena interrupted, placing a stack of documents on the table. "Forged death certificates, staged accident scenes, and a very convenient marriage to a woman with no memory and no identity." She moved around the table like a predator circling prey, her pregnancy somehow making her more formidable rather than vulnerable. "While I was being held captive in my own life, Victoria Rossetti has systematically destroyed this company. 60% of our workforce gone. 3 major divisions sold off to shell companies. Our charitable foundation, which provided scholarships to underprivileged children, completely dissolved. Now wait just a minute, interrupted Patricia Wells, the board member who had been most vocal in supporting Victoria's leadership. Victoria saved this company. Without her guidance. Without her guidance, we wouldn't have lost $2 billion in market value, Elena snapped, sliding a financial report across the table. Without her guidance, we wouldn't be under investigation by the SEC for suspicious financial transactions. And without her guidance, we wouldn't have employees committing suicide because they lost their life savings when their stock options became worthless. The room fell silent. Elena could see the guilt and fear warring in their faces. They had known something was wrong, but it had been easier to go along with Victoria's narrative than to ask difficult questions. Sarah entered the room and whispered something in Elena's ear. Elena's expression darkened. It seems the Rossetti family has decided to accelerate their timeline, Elena announced. Victoria just filed an emergency injunction claiming I'm mentally unstable and suffering from delusions brought on by pregnancy hormones. She's asking the court to have me committed for psychiatric evaluation. The baby kicked hard, as if responding to Elena's surge of adrenaline. She placed a protective hand over her belly, remembering Victoria's words from the night before. You think trapping my son with a bastard child will secure your place in this family? There's more, Sarah continued, her face pale. Marcus filed for divorce this morning, claiming abandonment and adultery. He's also filed for emergency custody of the unborn child, stating that you're an unfit mother. Elena felt the familiar rage building inside her, but this time it was different. This time it was controlled, focused, dangerous. They're trying to take my child. Elena, Romano said from his position by the door, where he'd been standing guard, we need to move carefully. The Rossetti family has judges in their pocket, police on their payroll. If we push too hard too fast, they'll what? Try to kill me again. Elena laughed, but there was no humor in it. Dad, they've already taken 2 years of my life, destroyed my company, and now they want to steal my child. I'm done being careful. She turned back to the board members, and several of them actually flinched at the intensity in her eyes. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to vote to remove Victoria Rossetti as CEO immediately. You're going to restore me to my rightful position. And you're going to help me rebuild everything she destroyed. And if we refuse? Patricia asked, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Elena smiled, and it was the smile of a woman who had built an empire from nothing and wasn't afraid to burn down anyone who stood in her way. Then I'll release the evidence I have about your personal financial dealings with the Rossetti family. Patricia, did you really think I wouldn't notice the $2 million that mysteriously appeared in your offshore account right after you voted to support Victoria's hostile takeover? Patricia's face went white. Around the table, other board members began shifting nervously, suddenly very interested in their hands. James, your son's gambling debts to Rossetti-owned casinos were forgiven right around the same time you decided Victoria was the best choice to lead this company. Interesting coincidence, don't you think? Elena moved to the head of the table, taking her rightful place. I know about all of it. Every bribe, every threat, every dirty deal. The question is, do you want to be part of the solution, or do you want to go down with the Rossetti ship? Before anyone could answer, the conference room doors burst open. Victoria Rossetti strode in flanked by 2 security guards and a man in an expensive suit who could only be a lawyer. "This meeting is over," Victoria announced, her voice dripping with authority. "Elena Rossetti, and yes, that's her legal name now, is mentally incompetent and has no authority to call board meetings or make corporate decisions." Elena stood slowly, and the room seemed to hold its breath. For a moment, the 2 women faced each other across the conference table, the woman who had built an empire and the woman who had tried to steal it. "Hello, Victoria," Elena said calmly. "I was wondering when you'd show up." Victoria's perfectly composed mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the fury beneath. "You should have stayed in the gutter where we found you. You should have been grateful for the life we gave you." "Grateful?" Elena's voice was dangerously quiet. "You mean grateful that you stole my identity, trapped me in an abusive marriage, and tried to erase everything I built? You built nothing." Victoria snarled, her composure finally cracking. "You were nobody. A broken woman with no memory, no family, no future. We gave you purpose." "You gave me hell," Elena replied, and suddenly she was moving around the table toward Victoria. "But more importantly, you made one crucial mistake." Victoria's security guard stepped forward, but Romano was faster, his detective's instincts and protective father's rage making him a formidable opponent despite his age. "What mistake?" Victoria asked, though Elena could see the fear creeping into her eyes. Elena stopped just inches from Victoria, close enough that only she could hear the next words. "You let me live long enough to remember who I really am." Then louder for the entire room to hear, "Sarah, please call the FBI. Tell them Elena Castellano is ready to turn over evidence in the Rossetti money laundering case." Victoria's face went from pale to ashen. "You have no evidence." "We destroyed everything." "You destroyed everything you could find," Elena corrected. "But you forgot that I'm not just a CEO. I'm a woman who survived in a male-dominated industry by always having a backup plan." She moved to the window, looking out over the city that had once been hers to command. "Did you really think I would build a case against your family without making sure the evidence would survive even if I didn't? What do you think Elena's backup plan is? And how far do you think the Rossetti family will go to silence her permanently? Share your theories below." Victoria's lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear, and Elena saw the exact moment when Victoria realized the scope of her miscalculation. The older woman's face twisted with rage and something that looked very much like panic. "This isn't over," Victoria hissed. "You have no idea what you're up against. My family has been destroying people like you for generations." Elena turned back to face her, one hand protectively cradling her belly, the other resting on the conference table she had once commanded with absolute authority. "You're right," she said quietly. "This isn't over. But Victoria, you made one other mistake." "What's that?" Elena's smile was sharp as a blade. "You assumed I was still the same broken woman you found 2 years ago. But I'm not just Elena Castellano anymore. I'm Elena Castellano with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for." As if summoned by her words, the baby kicked hard enough that Elena had to catch her breath. But instead of weakening her, it seemed to fill her with even more determination. "And now," she continued, "I'm fighting for 2. The war was no longer coming. It had arrived. The FBI arrived within the hour, led by Agent Sarah Chun, no relation to Marcus Chun from security, but equally professional and twice as intimidating. Elena watched from her reclaimed office as federal agents swarmed through the building, seizing computers, files, and financial records. Victoria had been escorted out in handcuffs, her lawyer frantically making phone calls while she screamed about false imprisonment and police corruption. But Elena knew this was just the beginning. The Rossetti family had tentacles throughout the city's power structure, and they wouldn't go down without a fight. "Ms. Castellano," Agent Chen said, entering the office with a thick file under her arm. "We need to discuss your testimony. The evidence you've provided is extensive." Elena nodded, settling into her chair, her real chair, which Sarah had somehow managed to keep in storage for 2 years. "I want full immunity for my cooperation, and I want protection for my unborn child." "Done," Agent Chen said without hesitation. "But there's something else we need to discuss. Something that might change everything you think you know about your case." Romano, who had been standing guard by the window, turned sharply. "What do you mean?" Agent Chen opened her file and pulled out a photograph. It showed Elena's car after the accident, twisted metal at the bottom of Miller's Ravine, barely recognizable as a vehicle. "We've been investigating the Rossetti family for 3 years, Agent Chen explained. "Your death was actually what broke the case wide open for us. But here's what we discovered during our investigation." She pulled out another photograph, this one showing tire tracks and skid marks on the road above the ravine. "Your car was forced off the road, just as you suspected. But the vehicle that hit you? It wasn't driven by a Rossetti family member." Elena felt her blood turn cold. "What are you saying?" "The paint samples we found on your car came from a vehicle registered to Morrison Tech, the company you had just acquired. More specifically, it was registered to David Morrison, the former CEO's son." The room spun around Elena. David Morrison, she remembered him now. Young, ambitious, bitter about his father's company being absorbed into her empire. "But murder? That's impossible," Romano said. "David Morrison died in a skiing accident 6 months after Elena's crash." Agent Chen's expression was grim. David Morrison was murdered. Shot execution style and dumped in the mountains. "We believe he was killed because he knew too much about who really orchestrated Elena's attempted murder." Elena's hand moved protectively to her belly as the implications hit her. "Someone hired David to kill me, then killed him to cover their tracks." "Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting." Agent Chen pulled out a bank statement. 3 days before your accident, David Morrison received a payment of $5 million from an offshore account. We've been trying to trace that account for 2 years. "And?" Elena asked, though she was beginning to suspect she didn't want to hear the answer. "We finally cracked it this morning. The account belongs to someone you trusted completely. Someone who had access to all your security protocols, your schedule, your personal information." Elena felt the world tilting on its axis. The baby kicked frantically, as if sensing her distress. "Who?" she whispered. Agent Chen placed a final document on the desk. It was a bank transfer authorization, and the signature at the bottom made Elena's blood freeze in her veins. "Sarah Martinez," Agent Chen said quietly. "Your executive assistant. Your closest friend. The woman who's been helping you reclaim your company." The silence in the room was deafening. Elena stared at the signature, Sarah's signature, authorizing the payment that had led to her attempted murder. "No," Elena breathed. "That's impossible. Sarah has been helping me. She saved the evidence, She saved the evidence because she knew exactly where it was," Agent Chen interrupted. "She's been feeding information to the Rossetti family for 2 years, helping them stay one step ahead of our investigation. Romano moved closer to Elena's chair, his detective instincts on high alert. "Where is Sarah now?" Agent Chun spoke into her radio, then looked up with concern. "She left the building 20 minutes ago. Said she was going to get coffee." Elena's mind raced through the events of the morning. Sarah had known about the safe, had known the combination, had been the one to suggest calling the FBI. But she had also been the one to tell Victoria about the board meeting, the one who had access to Elena's schedule and security codes. She's been playing both sides, Elena realized, her voice hollow with betrayal. Helping me just enough to maintain my trust while feeding information to the Rossettis. The office door opened, and Sarah walked in carrying a tray of coffee, her face the picture of concerned loyalty. "I thought everyone might need some caffeine after this morning's excitement," she said brightly. Then she saw Agent Chun and the documents spread across Elena's desk. Her smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place. "Is everything all right?" Sarah asked, but Elena could see the calculation behind her eyes now, the careful assessment of how much they knew. "Sarah," Elena said quietly, "how long have you been working for the Rossetti family?" Sarah's mask finally slipped completely. The warm, loyal assistant disappeared, replaced by someone cold and calculating. "Since before you hired me," she said, setting down the coffee tray with deliberate calm. "Victoria Rossetti placed me in your company 3 years ago to gather intelligence on your business practices." Elena felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. 3 years. Our entire friendship was a lie. "Not entirely," Sarah said, and for a moment, something that might have been genuine regret flickered in her eyes. "I did come to care about you, Elena. That's why I tried to make your death quick and painless." Romano's hand moved toward his weapon, but Sarah was faster. She pulled a small pistol from her purse, keeping it low but clearly visible. "I really hoped you would stay dead," Sarah continued conversationally. "Or at least stay lost in your amnesia. The plan was so perfect. You disappear, the Rossettis take over your company, and everyone gets what they want." "Except me," Elena said, her voice steady despite the gun pointed in her direction. "And my child." Sarah's expression hardened. "Your child was never supposed to exist. Marcus was supposed to keep you sedated and compliant, not get you pregnant. That baby complicates everything." Elena felt a surge of protective rage so intense it made her vision blur. "You're talking about murdering an innocent child." "I'm talking about cleaning up a mess," Sarah replied coldly. "The Rossetti family has invested too much in this operation to let it fail now." Agent Chun had been slowly reaching for her weapon, but Sarah noticed the movement. "I wouldn't, Agent Chun. I have nothing left to lose now, and I'm an excellent shot." "Do you think Sarah will actually pull the trigger? And what do you think Elena's next move should be? Drop your thoughts in the comments." Elena studied Sarah's face, looking for any trace of the woman she had trusted with her life, her secrets, her company. But that woman had never really existed. "Why?" Elena asked. "Why betray me? I trusted you with everything." Sarah laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "You trusted me because I made you trust me. It was my job. But you want to know the truth, Elena? I hated you. I hated your success, your confidence, your ability to build something from nothing while I had to scrape and claw for every opportunity. So you decided to destroy me." "I decided to take what should have been mine," Sarah corrected. "Do you have any idea what it's like to be the power behind the throne but never get any credit? To watch you make decisions, I suggested, and get all the praise. Elena felt the baby kick again, and suddenly she understood something that made her blood run cold. The coffee, she said, looking at the tray Sarah had brought in. You drugged it. Sarah smiled. Just a mild sedative. Enough to make you compliant while we figure out how to clean up this mess. Unfortunately, it's not safe for pregnant women. Side effects can include premature labor, fetal distress. Elena's protective instincts exploded into action. She lunged forward, not away from the gun but toward it, using her pregnancy as a shield she knew Sarah wouldn't expect her to risk. The move caught everyone off guard. Sarah hesitated for a crucial second. She couldn't shoot a pregnant woman at point-blank range without risking the child she'd been ordered to preserve, and that hesitation was all Elena needed. Years of self-defense classes came flooding back as Elena grabbed Sarah's wrist, twisting the gun away while driving her knee upward. Sarah screamed and doubled over, the weapon clattering across the floor. Romano and Agent Chun were on Sarah in seconds, but Elena remained standing over her former friend, breathing hard, one hand protectively cradling her belly. You made one mistake, Sarah, Elena said as the handcuffs clicked into place. You assumed I was still the same trusting woman you manipulated for 3 years. But betrayal has a way of teaching you who you really are. As Sarah was led away, she turned back one last time. This isn't over, Elena. The Rossetti family has resources you can't imagine. They'll never stop coming for you. Elena watched her former friend disappear through the door, then sank into her chair, the adrenaline finally wearing off. The baby was kicking frantically, and she whispered soothing words while trying to process the magnitude of the betrayal. Elena, Romano said gently, we need to get you to a hospital. Make sure the baby is okay after all this stress. She nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead to the next challenge. Sarah was right about one thing: the Rossetti family wouldn't give up easily. And now that their inside source was gone, they would become even more dangerous. But Elena Castellano had survived attempted murder, amnesia, abuse, and betrayal. She had reclaimed her identity, her company, and her power. Now she was going to finish what she started and destroy the people who had tried to erase her from existence. The war was far from over. But for the first time in 2 years, Elena was fighting it on her own terms. The hospital room felt like a fortress under siege. Elena lay connected to monitors that tracked both her heartbeat and her baby's, while federal agents stood guard outside her door. The stress of the day's revelations had triggered early contractions, and the doctors were fighting to prevent premature labor. The baby's heart rate is stabilizing, Dr. Patricia Williams said, adjusting the 4-drip. But you're only at 32 weeks, Elena. We need to keep you calm and still for at least another month. Elena nodded, but her mind was anything but calm. Through the window, she could see news vans gathering in the hospital parking lot. The story had broken. Dead CEO returns to expose criminal empire, and the media frenzy was just beginning. Romano sat in the chair beside her bed, his weathered face etched with worry. The FBI has Sarah in custody, but she's not talking. And Victoria made bail an hour ago. Of course she did, Elena said bitterly. The Rossetti family owns half the judges in this city. Agent Chun entered the room, her expression grim. We have a problem. Marcus Rossetti just filed an emergency court order claiming you're holding his child hostage. He's demanding immediate custody transfer and forced cesarean delivery. Elena's blood ran cold. They want to take my baby now? While I'm in the hospital? It gets worse, Agent Chun continued. The judge who's hearing the case is Judge Harrison. He's been on the Rossetti payroll for years. The hearing is scheduled for tomorrow morning, and if he rules in Marcus's favor, they'll cut my baby out of me and disappear with both of us, Elena finished, her hand moving protectively to her belly. The baby kicked weakly, as if sensing the danger. Elena had fought so hard to reclaim her life, only to have it threatened again when she was at her most vulnerable. "There's something else," Romano said quietly. "I've been getting calls from my contacts in the police department. Word is that the Rossetti family has put a contract out on you. $500,000 to anyone who can make your suicide look convincing." Elena closed her eyes, feeling the weight of exhaustion and fear pressing down on her. Every time she thought she was winning, the Rossettis found a new way to attack. And now, trapped in a hospital bed with her unborn child's life hanging in the balance, she felt more helpless than she had since waking up with amnesia 2 years ago. "Elena," Agent Chen said gently, "we can put you in witness protection. New identity, new life, somewhere the Rossetti family can never find you. And let them keep my company? Let them destroy everything I built." Elena shook her head. "No. I won't run again." "Then what do you want to do?" Before Elena could answer, the lights in the room flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. "Hospital-wide power outage," came an announcement over the intercom. "All non-essential personnel, please remain in place while we investigate." Romano was on his feet instantly, his detective instinct screaming danger. This isn't a coincidence. Agent Chun was already speaking into her radio, but only static came back. "Communications are jammed," she said, drawing her weapon. "We need to move Elena now." But as they prepared to transfer Elena to a wheelchair, the door to her room burst open. Not federal agents or hospital staff, but 3 men in dark clothing with guns drawn. "Nobody move," the lead man commanded. Elena recognized him, Tony Rossetti, Marcus's older brother and the family's primary enforcer. "You're making a mistake, Tony," Romano said, his hand hovering near his weapon. "This hospital is surrounded by federal agents." Tony smiled coldly. "Not anymore. Amazing what a few well-placed explosions can do to create chaos. Half the FBI is dealing with terrorist threats across the city right now." Elena felt her contractions intensifying as fear flooded her system. The baby's heart rate spiked on the monitor, and Dr. Williams stepped forward. "This woman is in premature labor," the doctor said firmly. "Moving her could kill both her and the child." "That's not our problem," Tony replied. "We have orders to bring her to the family. What happens after that depends on how cooperative she is." Elena struggled to sit up, her mind racing through options. She was trapped, outnumbered, and physically vulnerable. But she was also Elena Castellano, the woman who had built an empire from nothing and survived 2 years of hell. "What does Victoria want?" she asked, buying time while her mind worked. "Simple," Tony said. "You sign over permanent custody of the child to Marcus, transfer all remaining assets of Castellano Industries to the Rossetti Family Trust, and then you disappear. Permanently." "And if I refuse?" Tony's smile was genuinely terrifying. "Then we take the baby anyway, and you die here tonight. Your choice." Elena felt the baby kick frantically, and suddenly she understood something that made her heart race with more than fear. Her child wasn't just responding to stress. The baby was responding to her emotions, her determination, her refusal to give up. "I need to think about it," she said, her voice deliberately weak and defeated. Tony relaxed slightly, mistaking her tone for surrender. "Smart choice. You have 5 minutes to." Elena's hand found the call button for the nurse's station and pressed it repeatedly. Not for help, the communications were jammed, but because she remembered something from her tours of the hospital's charity wing. The call button was connected to more than just the nurse's station. It was connected to the hospital's fire suppression system, designed to alert emergency services if a patient was in distress during a fire. Alarms began blaring throughout the hospital. Not medical alarms, fire alarms. In the chaos that followed, as Tony and his men spun around trying to identify the new threat, Elena made her move. She grabbed the four-stand and swung it with all her strength at the nearest gunman, the metal pole connecting with his skull with a sickening crack. Romano and Agent Chun moved simultaneously, years of training taking over. But Elena wasn't done. Despite her pregnancy, despite the contractions, despite everything, she was fighting for her child's life with a ferocity that surprised everyone in the room. "Elena, get down!" Romano shouted as gunfire erupted. But Elena was already moving, using the hospital bed as cover while she reached for the emergency phone that connected directly to the police dispatch. The Rossettis might have jammed cell phones and radios, but they couldn't jam hardwired emergency systems. "This is Elena Castellano at City General Hospital," she gasped into the phone. "Armed men are trying to kidnap me and my unborn child. Officer down, federal agent down, need immediate backup." Tony appeared around the bed, his gun trained on her head. Clever girl. But not clever enough. Elena looked up at him, and despite everything, the gun, the contractions, the fear, she smiled. "Actually, Tony, I think I was clever enough." "What are you talking about?" "The fire alarms aren't just alarms," she said. "They're connected to the hospital's lockdown protocol. Every exit is sealed, every elevator is disabled, and every security camera is now recording everything that happens in this room." Tony's face went white as he realized the implications. They were trapped in the hospital with federal agents, police, and fire department all converging on their location. "You stupid bitch," he snarled, his finger tightening on the trigger. "You've killed us all." Elena felt another contraction hit, stronger than before, and she knew her baby was coming whether she was ready or not. But she also knew something else. She had bought them time, and time was all she needed. "Do you think Elena and her baby will survive this final confrontation? What do you think happens when the authorities breach the hospital? Share your predictions below." "Maybe," Elena said, her voice steady despite the pain. "But I've also saved my child. And that's all that matters." As sirens wailed outside and footsteps thundered through the hospital corridors, Elena Castellano prepared to fight the most important battle of her life, not just for her company or her identity, but for the future of the child she would die to protect. The darkest hour was upon them. But dawn was coming, and Elena intended to see it. The sound of Elena's baby's heartbeat filled the room like a war drum, steady and strong despite the chaos. As Tony Rossetti's finger tightened on the trigger, Elena felt something shift inside her, not just another contraction, but a surge of power that seemed to come from the child she carried. "You know what your biggest mistake was, Tony?" Elena said, her voice growing stronger with each word despite the gun pointed at her head. "Shut up," Tony snarled, but Elena could see uncertainty flickering in his eyes as the sirens grew louder outside. "Your biggest mistake was thinking I was still the broken woman your family found 2 years ago," Elena continued, slowly pulling herself to her feet using the hospital bed for support. "But I'm not that woman anymore." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "Elena, you need to lie down. The stress is making me stronger," Elena said, and it was true. Each contraction, each surge of protective instinct, was awakening something primal and powerful within her. "This baby isn't just my child, it's my strength." Romano, wounded but still conscious from the earlier gunfight, managed to speak from where he lay behind an overturned chair. "Elena, the SWAT team is in the building. Just keep him talking." But Elena wasn't interested in just keeping Tony talking. She was done being a victim, done being hunted, done letting the Rossetti family control her life. "You want to know something interesting about Castellano Industries, Tony?" she asked, taking a step toward him despite the gun. "Before your family destroyed it, we had a private security division. Military contractors, bodyguards, tactical specialists." Tony's eyes narrowed. "So what?" "So I learned from the best," Elena said, and suddenly she wasn't moving like a pregnant woman in labor anymore. She was moving like someone who had been trained by professionals, someone who understood that the most dangerous opponent was the one who had nothing left to lose. "I learned that the key to winning any fight isn't strength or weapons," she continued, taking another step. "It's knowing your enemy's weakness." "Stay back," Tony warned, but his voice lacked conviction now. "Your weakness, Tony, is that you underestimate women. You always have. You underestimated me. You underestimated what a mother will do to protect her child, and you definitely underestimated what happens when you corner someone who's already survived everything you could throw at them." Elena's hand moved to her belly as another contraction hit, but instead of weakening her, it seemed to fuel her determination. "This baby is coming tonight, Tony. And I'll be damned if the first thing my child sees is your ugly face." The door to the room exploded inward as SWAT officers flooded in, but Elena was already moving. Years of self-defense training, combined with the desperate strength of a mother protecting her child, made her faster than Tony expected. She grabbed his gun hand, twisting it upward as the weapon discharged harmlessly into the ceiling. Her other hand found the pressure point at his wrist that her security team had taught her, and Tony's grip loosened involuntarily. "Elena!" Agent Chen shouted as she and the SWAT team secured the other gunman. But Elena was beyond hearing. She was in a zone of pure protective instinct, her body moving with a grace and power that seemed impossible for someone in active labor. Tony tried to break free, but Elena had leverage, training, and most importantly, the absolute certainty that she would not let anyone harm her child. "This is for 2 years of my life," she said, driving her knee upward into Tony's solar plexus. He doubled over, gasping, and Elena followed up with an elbow strike to the back of his neck that sent him crashing to the floor. "This is for my company," she continued, kicking the gun away from his reach. Tony tried to crawl toward his weapon, but Elena stepped on his wrist, applying pressure with a precision that spoke of professional training. "And this," she said, leaning down so only he could hear, "is for threatening my child." She pressed harder, and Tony screamed. "Elena, that's enough," Agent Chen said, but there was admiration in her voice. "We've got him." Elena stepped back, breathing hard, her hand moving protectively to her belly. The baby was kicking frantically, but the heartbeat on the monitor was strong and steady. "Ma'am," one of the SWAT officers said, "we need to get you medical attention immediately." But Elena was looking past him, out the window where she could see news helicopters circling and crowds gathering. The story was spreading, not just about the Rossetti family's crimes, but about the pregnant CEO who had fought back against impossible odds. "Dr. Williams," Elena said, turning to the physician who had been cowering behind the medical equipment, How long do I have before this baby arrives? Based on your contractions and dilation, I'd say less than an hour, the doctor replied. We need to get you to the delivery room immediately. Elena nodded, but her mind was already racing ahead. Agent Chun, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I need you to arrest Victoria Rossetti before she finds out what happened here. She's going to run, and if she escapes... Already done, Agent Chun said with satisfaction. We picked her up 20 minutes ago trying to board a private jet to a non-extradition country. She's in federal custody. Elena felt a surge of triumph that was almost as powerful as her contractions. And Marcus, also in custody. Turns out when you're facing federal charges, your family's money and influence don't count for much. As the medical team prepared to move Elena to the delivery room, she caught sight of herself in the reflection of the window. Despite everything, the hospital gown, the 4 lines, the obvious signs of labor, she looked like herself again. Not the broken woman who had been digging through garbage just hours ago, but Elena Castellano, CEO, fighter, survivor. Dad, she said to Romano as the paramedics helped him onto a stretcher. Are you going to be okay? Romano smiled through his pain. I'm going to be fine, sweetheart. The question is, are you ready to be a mother? Elena felt another contraction building, stronger than all the others, and she knew her child was ready to enter the world. But more than that, she was ready to be the mother this baby deserved, strong, fearless, and absolutely unbreakable. I've been ready my whole life, she said. I just didn't know it until now. What do you think Elena will name her baby? And how do you think becoming a mother will change her approach to rebuilding her empire? Drop your thoughts in the comments. As they wheeled her toward the delivery room, Elena caught one last glimpse of Tony Rossetti being led away in handcuffs. He looked up at her with pure hatred, but Elena felt nothing but pity for him. He had spent his life trying to destroy others to build his own power. She had spent hers building something that would outlast any attempt to tear it down. And now she was about to bring new life into the world, life that would carry on her legacy long after the Rossetti family was nothing but a cautionary tale. The turning point had come and gone. Elena Castellano was no longer just surviving. She was conquering. The delivery room became Elena's final battlefield. At 11:47 p.m., as contractions reached their peak intensity, Elena Castellano faced the most important fight of her life, bringing her child safely into the world while federal agents secured the hospital and news crews broadcast her story to millions. One more push, Elena, Dr. Williams encouraged, her voice cutting through the controlled chaos. Your baby is almost here. Elena gripped the bed rails, her knuckles white with effort, but her mind was crystal clear. Through the delivery room's window, she could see Agent Chun coordinating with other federal agents, while Romano, bandaged but insistent on being nearby, stood guard despite his injuries. I can see the head, Dr. Williams announced. Elena, your baby is coming. With a surge of strength that came from somewhere deeper than muscle and bone, Elena pushed with everything she had. And then, at 11:52 p.m. on a November night that had started with her digging through garbage, her daughter entered the world with a cry that sounded like victory itself. It's a girl, Dr. Williams said, tears streaming down her face as she placed the baby on Elena's chest. A beautiful, perfect girl. Elena looked down at her daughter, red-faced, tiny fists waving, eyes wide with the wonder of first breath, and felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. This was what she had been fighting for. Not just her company, not just her identity, but this perfect little person who would grow up knowing that her mother had moved heaven and earth to protect her. "Hello, my warrior princess," Elena whispered, stroking the baby's cheek. "Mama's been waiting so long to meet you." Agent Chun appeared at her bedside, her professional composure cracking as she looked at the newborn. "She's beautiful, Elena. What are you going to name her?" Elena had known the answer since the moment she had reclaimed her identity. "Victoria," she said, and everyone in the room gasped. "Victoria Elena Castellano." "After your mother-in-law?" Agent Chen asked, confused. Elena's smile was fierce and proud. "After the victory she represents. Every time someone speaks her name, they'll be speaking the word victory. The Rossetti family tried to steal that word from me by giving it to their matriarch. Now it belongs to my daughter, the ultimate proof that they failed to destroy me." As if understanding the significance of her name, baby Victoria quieted in her mother's arms, her tiny fingers wrapping around Elena's thumb with surprising strength. Romano approached the bed, his eyes wet with tears of joy and relief. "She's got your eyes," he said softly, "and your stubborn chin." "Dad," Elena said, looking up at him, "I want you to be her grandfather officially. I want her to grow up knowing she comes from a line of fighters." Before Romano could respond, Agent Chen's phone rang. She answered quickly, her expression growing more amazed with each word she heard. "Elena," she said, hanging up, "you need to hear this. We just finished processing Sarah's computer files, and we found something extraordinary." Elena adjusted baby Victoria in her arms, never taking her eyes off her daughter's face. "What did you find?" Sarah kept detailed records of everything, not just her work for the Rossetti family, but everything. Including records of other companies the Rossettis have been systematically destroying through hostile takeovers, staged accidents, and murder. Elena looked up sharply. "How many other companies?" 17 over the past decade. 17 CEOs who died in accidents or suicides after the Rossetti family moved to acquire their businesses. Elena, you weren't their first victim. You were just the one who survived long enough to expose them. The magnitude of it hit Elena like a physical blow. 17 other people who had died for their greed. 17 other families destroyed. 17 other companies stripped for parts and sold off. "There's more," Agent Chun continued. "The evidence Sarah collected doesn't just implicate the immediate Rossetti family. It goes all the way up to their associates in city government, state politics, even federal positions. This is going to bring down an entire criminal network." Elena felt baby Victoria stir in her arms, and she looked down to see her daughter's eyes, her own steel-gray eyes, looking back at her with what seemed like understanding. "Agent Chun," Elena said quietly, "I want to make a statement to the press." "Elena, you just gave birth. You need rest." "I need to speak," Elena interrupted. "Those 17 families deserve to know that justice is finally coming. And the world needs to understand that this isn't just about one woman reclaiming her company. This is about stopping a criminal empire that has been murdering innocent people for decades." 30 minutes later, Elena sat in her hospital bed, baby Victoria sleeping peacefully in her arms, as cameras rolled and the world watched. Despite having just given birth, despite the exhaustion and trauma of the past few days, Elena Castellano had never looked more powerful. "My name is Elena Castellano," she began, her voice clear and strong. 2 years ago, the Rossetti crime family tried to murder me to steal my company. They failed to kill my body, so they tried to kill my mind instead, trapping me in amnesia and an abusive marriage while they systematically destroyed everything I had built. She looked down at baby Victoria, who seemed to sleep more peacefully at the sound of her mother's voice. But they made one crucial mistake. They underestimated what a mother will do to protect her child. They underestimated what a woman will do when she remembers who she really is. And they underestimated the power of truth to ultimately triumph over corruption. Elena looked directly into the camera, and millions of viewers saw not a victim, but a conqueror. Tonight, I want to speak to the families of 17 other CEOs who died under suspicious circumstances over the past decade. Your loved ones were not cowards who took their own lives. They were not careless people who died in accidents. They were murdered by the same criminal organization that tried to murder me. But their deaths were not in vain, because their sacrifice has given us the evidence we need to ensure that justice is finally served. Baby Victoria stirred and opened her eyes, looking up at her mother with what seemed like pride. What do you think will happen to the Rossetti family empire now that Elena has exposed everything? And how do you think baby Victoria will change Elena's approach to business and life? Share your thoughts below. To anyone else who might be facing similar threats, who might be fighting against impossible odds, who might feel like giving up, I want you to know that you are stronger than you think. You are more resilient than you know. And you are never truly defeated until you choose to stop fighting. Elena kissed her daughter's forehead, breathing in that perfect new baby scent that somehow made everything else seem manageable. The Castellano Industries that emerges from this will be different from the company I built before. It will be stronger, more ethical, and more committed to protecting the innocent. Because I'm no longer just fighting for profit or success. I'm fighting to build a world where my daughter can grow up safe, where other families don't have to suffer what mine has suffered, and where justice means more than whoever has the most money or power. As the cameras stopped rolling and the reporters filed their stories, Elena leaned back against her pillows, exhausted but triumphant. Baby Victoria slept peacefully in her arms, completely unaware that she had just witnessed her mother's greatest victory. Romano sat beside the bed, his own injuries forgotten as he watched his daughter and granddaughter. "You did it," he said softly. "You actually did it." Elena smiled, feeling more at peace than she had in 2 years. "We did it, Dad. All of us. And this is just the beginning." Outside, dawn was breaking over the city that had once belonged to the Rossetti family. But power, Elena had learned, didn't belong to those who seized it through violence and fear. It belonged to those who earned it through courage, truth, and the unbreakable determination to protect what mattered most. As baby Victoria slept in her arms, Elena Castellano began planning not just the rebuilding of her empire, but the creation of something far greater, a legacy that would ensure her daughter grew up in a world where justice and love were stronger than greed and corruption. The climactic battle was over. The war was won. Now came the most important work of all, building a future worthy of the child who had given her the strength to reclaim everything. 6 months later, Elena stood in her reclaimed corner office on the 57th floor, baby Victoria sleeping peacefully in a custom crib position where she could always keep an eye on her daughter. The view from her window showed a city transformed, Rossetti properties seized by federal authorities, their criminal network dismantled, and justice finally served. Castellano Industries had not only recovered, but thrived under Elena's ethical leadership. The company now employed more people than ever before, with a focus on technology that protected rather than exploited, businesses that built communities rather than destroyed them. The quarterly reports, Sarah Martinez's replacement, David Kim, said as he placed the documents on Elena's desk. Where Sarah had been manipulative and secretive, David was transparent and trustworthy, a former FBI financial analyst who understood the importance of ethical business practices. Elena reviewed the numbers with satisfaction. Profits were higher than ever, but more importantly, they were earned through innovation and integrity rather than exploitation and corruption. Romano entered the office, walking with barely a limp despite his injuries from that night 6 months ago. He had officially retired from the police force to become Castellano Industries' head of security, ensuring that what happened to Elena would never happen to anyone else on his watch. The memorial service for the 17 victims is scheduled for next week, he said, settling into the chair across from Elena's desk. Their families are finally getting the closure they deserve. Elena nodded, looking down at baby Victoria. Her daughter was growing stronger every day, her gray eyes becoming more alert and intelligent with each passing week. She was Elena's reminder of what truly mattered, not just success, but the responsibility that came with power. "Any word from the trials?" Elena asked. Victoria Rossetti got life without parole, Romano reported with grim satisfaction. Marcus got 25 years. Tony and the rest of the family are looking at similar sentences. Sarah's cooperation got her 15 years, but she'll be in witness protection for the rest of her life. Elena felt a sense of completion. Justice had been served, her daughter was safe, and her company was stronger than ever. She had not only survived the Rossetti family's attempts to destroy her, she had used their own crimes to build something better. Baby Victoria stirred in her crib, making the soft cooing sounds that never failed to melt Elena's heart. Elena picked up her daughter, marveling at how much she had grown. "Mama's building you a better world, little warrior princess," Elena whispered. "A world where strong women protect each other instead of tearing each other down." David cleared his throat. "Ma'am, there is one more thing. You have a visitor who insists on seeing you personally. Says it's about your past." Elena frowned. Her past had been thoroughly investigated and documented during the trials. What could anyone possibly want to discuss now? "Who is it?" "She says her name is Isabella Castellano. Claims to be your sister." Elena felt the world tilt on its axis. Sister? She had never had a sister. Romano had never mentioned having another daughter. "That's impossible," Romano said, his detective instincts immediately alert. "Elena is my only child." But even as he spoke, Elena felt a strange stirring in her memory, not the foggy confusion of her amnesia, but something deeper. A flash of a young girl with dark hair and familiar gray eyes. A memory from before the accident, from before everything she thought she knew about her life. "Send her in," Elena said, her voice steady despite the growing unease in her chest. The woman who entered was clearly related to Elena. Same height, same bone structure, same steel-gray eyes. But where Elena radiated confidence and strength, this woman seemed haunted, desperate. "Hello, sister," Isabella said, her voice carrying an accent Elena couldn't place. "I've been looking for you for a very long time." Romano stepped protectively closer to Elena and baby Victoria. "I don't know who you are, but Elena has no sister." Isabella smiled sadly. "Of course she doesn't remember. They made sure of that when they separated us as children. Elena, do you remember the fire? The night our parents died and we were split up in the foster system." Elena's breath caught in her throat. Fire. The word triggered something deep in her memory, not the car accident that had stolen her recent past, but something much older. The smell of smoke, the sound of screaming, being torn away from someone she loved. "I don't understand," Elena whispered, clutching baby Victoria closer. "Our real parents weren't Romano," Isabella continued, her eyes never leaving Elena's face. They were killed when we were children because they discovered something that powerful people wanted to stay hidden. You were adopted by Romano and given a new identity to protect you. I wasn't so lucky. Romano's face had gone pale. Isabella Castellano died in a house fire 25 years ago, along with her parents and sister Elena. I adopted Elena because someone paid you to, Isabella finished. Because someone needed Elena to disappear into a new life while they used me for something much worse. Elena felt baby Victoria stir restlessly in her arms, as if sensing the tension in the room. What are you talking about? Used you for what? Isabella's smile was bitter and broken. I've spent the last 25 years as a weapon, Elena. Trained to kill, trained to steal, trained to destroy. While you were building an empire, I was tearing down anyone who threatened the wrong people. The room fell silent except for baby Victoria's soft breathing. But here's the thing, sister, Isabella continued, her voice dropping to a whisper that chilled Elena to the bone. The people who used me? They're not done with our family. The Rossetti crime family was small time compared to the organization I work for. And now that you've made yourself so visible, so powerful, so successful. Isabella reached into her jacket, and Elena saw Romano tense, ready to protect his family. But Isabella didn't pull out a weapon. She pulled out a photograph, two little girls, maybe 5 and 6 years old, holding hands and smiling at the camera. They sent me to collect you, Elena. You and your daughter. My employers have plans for the Castellano bloodline, and they've been very patient waiting for the right moment. Elena stared at the photograph, recognition flooding through her like ice water. She remembered this picture being taken. She remembered the sister she had lost and mourned and eventually forgotten. What do you think Isabella's real intentions are? Is she there to save Elena or destroy her? And who is the mysterious organization that's been pulling strings behind everything? Share your theories in the comments. But I have a choice to make, Isabella continued, her voice breaking slightly. I can complete my mission and destroy the only family I have left. Or I can finally break free from the people who stole our childhood and turn our lives into weapons. She looked directly at Elena, and in her sister's eyes, Elena saw something that made her blood run cold. Not just pain and desperation, but the cold calculation of someone trained to kill without hesitation. The question is, sister, Isabella said, taking a step closer, are you strong enough to help me destroy the people who created us both? Because if you're not... Isabella's hand moved back toward her jacket, and Elena realized with crystal clarity that her greatest victory might have just become her most dangerous trap. The war Elena thought she had won was about to begin all over again. But this time, she wasn't just fighting for her company or her life. She was fighting against her own blood. And somewhere in the shadows, an organization with 25 years of patience was finally ready to collect on an investment they had made in 2 little girls who survived a fire that was never an accident. Elena Castellano had reclaimed her empire, saved her daughter, and brought justice to those who wronged her. But she was about to discover that her real enemies had been watching and waiting all along. But is it really the end? What secrets are still hidden in Elena's past? And can 2 sisters torn apart by tragedy find a way to stand together against an enemy that created them both? Thank you so much for watching this story all the way to the end. If this touched your heart, then you're going to love the next one. It's just as powerful, and even more intriguing than you can imagine. So don't stop here. Click the video showing on your screen right now and continue the journey. I'll be waiting for you on the other side of that story. See you there.